Well, welcome back, friends, to the Polish Podcast. We hope you are enjoying our conversation today with our guest, Tiffanie Limbrick. But now it's time to add a dash of spontaneity and a sprinkle of fun to the show. It's time for Ask Me Anything. So, Tiffanie, this is how Ask Me Anything works. It's a chance for us to peel back the layers and get to know the woman behind the work, your quirks behind the expertise. So I've curated a few questions for you, and I'm just going to follow my curiosity to know more about you. Are you game?
I'm game. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Question 1. Considering your legal background, if you could argue a case in any fictional universe, think like Hogwarts or Middle Earth or Marvel or whatever universe you can think of, which one would you choose and why?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Fictional universe. Okay, I'm going to have to go with my favorite book. My favorite fictional book is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Classic, I know. Yeah, I am sure there's a case between Elizabeth and Darcy. Some kind of defamation case, absolutely a defamation case, I'm sure. But I think I would get a kick out of cross-examining Darcy, especially. Putting him on the stand would be excellent.
Oh my goodness.
And for the record, for anybody who wants to weigh in on the controversy of which Pride and Prejudice movie is the best, the correct answer is the BBC version with the original Colin. Yes. So that is the correct.
Colin Firth, right?
That's right. Yes.
That's right. Well, yes. Yes. Oh, that is fun. Well, thank you for instructing us and informing us on that. Oh, I love that. That went deep. I didn't know how deep that would go, but I love it. I love it. I knew you'd have a great answer for that one. Considering leadership in general, what's the most challenging leadership decision you've had to make, and what did you learn from it?
Ooh. I was the student body president in my undergrad years, and I am old enough that Facebook was launching when I was an undergrad. And at the time, it was very unknown, and it was limited to only university students, and it was being launched individually on the universities. And my university was deciding, are we going to allow Facebook to be used by our campus? And what is it going to look like? How are we going to protect our students? And they were involving me very heavily in that decision process as the student body president. I was representing the students' opinion at the time. And it was a very difficult time because on one hand, I was very concerned about student safety. On the other hand, I was also very cognizant of freedom of speech concerns and students' desire to be on this platform. And how do we balance the two, right? How do we kind of hold those two things in tension? And it was a very challenging thing, especially for me. I mean, I was like 20, 21 at the time. I learned a lot about discernment in that process and gathering information from wise people and gathering a diverse points of view so that I could come to a decision that was uniquely mine. So instead of, because I feel like young people, or when you're a kid, you tend to adapt the views of the grown-ups in your life, whether it's parents or your teachers, or maybe it's a pastor or whomever, and you just adapt those as you probably should, right? But then as you start to grow up, you need to start challenging those, and in a wise way, in a discerning way, and start to learn how to adopt those ideas as your own, and being able to know what is a good idea, what's a bad idea, and figuring things out on your own. And so through that process, I started to learn how to do that. And I mean, spoiler, we did adopt Facebook. Shocker, right?
You're right.
But I insisted that we had mandatory trainings for all of the students on how to use it safely. And so we did that for at least the first year. I'm sure they didn't keep that up until Facebook was widely available, of course. But we had safety trainings to tell people things like, don't put your address online. Don't, share personal information,
Right.
And to try and teach people how to use the stuff safely.
Yeah. I remember when Facebook launched too, at my university, and it was a whole new frontier back then. It looked completely different back then than it does today. Well, my final question for you, Tiffanie, in this segment is, in your experience, what qualities are most important for leaders in the legal profession, and how do you think you cultivate these traits?
Yes. So I think, I think our legal profession needs kindness. It is desperate for kindness. And I want to tell you a story. It just happened last week. So I had a friend, and I've known her for like 2 years, and she had come over to my house for a game night, and we were talking, and somebody just offhandedly made a remark about how I was a lawyer, and she stopped the room and she said, "What? You're a lawyer?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, how did you miss that?" And she was like, "I had no idea." And then she said, "I had no idea lawyers could be Christians." And I was like, "Oh my goodness, this is terrible. It is terrible for my profession that her perception of lawyers is so bad that she thought the principles of our faith are so inconsistent with the practice of law." And I think it's because so many, at least the perception of lawyers is that they do not approach people with the loving kindness that Jesus approached people. And I know that lawyers have to be zealous advocates for their clients, but I think there's a way to do that with kindness. And I think you can do that and be a successful lawyer. And I think you can do that because I feel like I was for years. And I think you can do that by not cussing at people, by not calling them names. And these are bare minimums,
Yeah, I like that.
Low-hanging fruit to me.
Right.
But that happened to me on the regular. I mean, all the times. People called me demeaning things. The frequent one, little girl. Like, oh my goodness. You talk about setting me off. I mean, but I also think that, the original intent of a lawyer is to be an advocate. And you can be an advocate by presenting the facts in a persuasive way. That's our job. But you can do it in a kind way. And Jesus was an advocate. He is our advocate. He is our advocate before God. And you don't see him doing it in a way other than kind. You don't see him name calling people. You don't see him angry at people. Well, he flipped a couple tables, but that's okay.
Righteous anger.
But it's that loving kindness. And I think that we can do that. So I'm a big proponent of putting the civility back into the practice of law. I think you can do it. And I think the best lawyers do it. And I would encourage any Christian lawyers out there, not only should you be the model behavior of that, you should demand that from the other people, not only in your workplace, but the person on the other side of the table. Just don't engage with them if they're not going to behave that way. And I think you can do that in a loving, kind way too. There were very frequently, if somebody was yelling at me on the phone, I would just very professionally tell them, "I'm sorry, I am not going to have this conversation with you while you are behaving that way. Please call me when you are willing to speak to me in a professional manner." Hang up. That's it.
Yeah.
And so I think that as lawyers, we can demand that level of professionalism, and we can model that level of professionalism.
No, that's so good, Tiffanie. Kindness, kindness, kindness all around. That I totally agree. Well, thank you so much, Tiffanie, for sharing just little bits more with us and our audience. And here's the thing, friends, we want you to be a part of the conversation too. So if you have just questions about leadership, or you're curious about future guests, or you just have questions that you just need to ask, go to our website at polishnetwork.org and submit your questions there. Be an MVP of the podcast. You'll get a mention and insight into your favorite guests in leadership development. Send those questions in today.